This is number 4, Mysteries of History Revealed, Dinosaurs to Extraterrestrials by Jeremy Auldaney, copyright 2014, all rights reserved. Page 20, Petrified Forest in Arizona. A book on travel and geology in Arizona tells us that scientists believe the petrified forest in Arizona was formed by volcanic eruptions and mud flows similar to Mount St. Helens. This is similar to the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry in Utah and Specimen Ridge, Yellowstone. Wikipedia gives details of the petrified forest in Arizona. Quote, "The petrified forest is known for its fossils, especially fallen trees that lived in the late Triassic about 225 million years ago. The sediments containing the fossil logs are part of the widespread and colorful Chinle Formation from which the Painted Desert gets its name. Beginning about 60 million years ago, the Colorado Plateau, of which the park is part, was pushed upward by tectonic forces and exposed to increased erosion. All the park's rocks layers have above the Chinle, except geologically recent ones found in parts of the park, have been removed by wind and water, they assume. In addition to petrified logs, fossils found in the park have included late Triassic ferns, cycads, ginkgos, and many other plants, as well as fauna, including giant crocodilian reptiles called phytosaurs, large amphibians, which are salamanders, and early dinosaurs. These are very large salamanders, which are extinct. Geology," that's end quote. "Geology and the Painted Desert." National Park Service brochure 2006 explains, quote, "During the late Triassic, down trees accumulated in river channels in what became the park were buried periodically by sediment containing volcanic ash. Groundwater dissolved silicon dioxide from the ash and carried it into the logs, where it formed quartz crystals that gradually replaced the organic matter." Author's note: this has been proven false. The organic material is preserved inside the silicon and can be carbon-14 dated. Traces of iron oxide and other substances combined with the silica to create varied colors in the petrified wood, end quote. Continuing, quote, "The colorful Chinle, which appears on the surface in many parts of the southwestern United States, from which the Painted Desert gets its name, is up to 800 feet, 240 meters thick in the park. It consists of a variety of sedimentary rocks, including beds of soft, fine-grained mudstone, siltstone, and claystone, much of which is bentonite, as well as harder sandstone and conglomerate and limestone," end quote. Wikipedia defines bentonite. Quote, "Bentonite usually forms from weathering of volcanic ash, most often in the presence of water," end quote. The trees in the Arizona Petrified Forest are in volcanic ash and are petrified by volcanic ash covering 965 square miles. This same layer of volcanic ash goes all the way from Arizona's Petrified Forest to Tuba City, where it lies on top of the Jurassic Dilophosaur dinosaur tracks. Triassic on the top of younger Jurassic. This strata is not an overthrust, nor is it upside down, because the trackways are found in its level layers right side up and are flat. They haven't been crushed or moved in any way. The same ash at the Petrified Forest near Hallbrook is found at almost all dinosaur sites all over the continent and the world, showing this eruption of volcanic ash was going on worldwide in all the geologic strata from Paleozoic, Mesozoic flood deposits, including some Cenozoic post-flood strata. However, the Cenozoic post-flood volcanic ash is mostly basaltic and was deposited on dry land as falling ash, while the Mesozoic, or during flood or before flood, was deposited under flowing water. The dinosaur tracks found in this same Jurassic strata are in a flat layer or layers stretching from New Jersey to California. Dinosaur deposits contain salt from the ocean. Owl Rock member of the Chinle Formation consists of pinkish-orange mudstone, note feldspar, mixed with hard, thin layers of limestone. Lenses of selenite gypsum are scattered periodically through the Owl Rock member, representing the minerals left behind after the evaporation of inland lakes from marine saltwater incursions. This is a reference: marine salt pan gypsum, mushroom cultivation, shroomery, at a website, shroomery.org. Mushroom cultivation, December 3rd, 2011. 4 posts. 1 author. One of the byproducts of salt is gypsum crystals, a marine evaporate. The formation of this crystal is from the evaporation of salt water. Another reference: the National Park Service published a paper, Continental Trace Fossils, Petrified Forest National Park, Tools for Paleohydrologic and Paleoecosystem Reconstructions. Stephen T. Histios, Department of Geologic Sciences, University of Colorado Campus, Box 250, Boulder, Colorado, 80309-0250. That's the zip code. And Russell F. Dubiel, U.S. Geological Survey, Denver, Colorado, 80225-0046, zip code. Quote, these inland lakes were left behind when the oceans covered the land, leaving behind mineral evaporates like gypsum and salt. Continental trace fossils, note ichnofossils or tracks, from the Petrified Forest member of the Upper Triassic Chinle Formation in Petrified Forest National Park, reduced to PEFO for short, Arizona, were made by beetles, termites, soil arthropods, horseshoe crabs, and crayfish, end quote. Wikipedia says, quote, horseshoe crabs, family Limulidae, order Xyphosauria or Xyphosauridae, are arthropods that lived primarily in and around shallow ocean waters, end quote. When I was in the Petrified Forest, I discovered a piece of gypsum, which I recognized because I had found a lot of it in Orange County Miocene fossil sites, which were marine. This indicated to me that the ocean had been here when these strata were deposited. Then I heard that a horseshoe crab fossil had been found in the Petrified Forest, which confirmed my suspicions. Here is interesting information that indicates the petrified forests around the world are massive flood deposits. This reference, how much ocean is needed to make all this gypsum, by website geo.mtu.edu. This is from a research project from Michigan Technological University. Quote, you measured and described one gypsum layer. There are 5 more gypsum layers within the Michigan Formation in this area. These are salts of a 1,000-foot deep ocean in an arid area where to completely dry up it would precipitate about 16 foot of evaporates. It will precipitate gypsum when enough water has evaporated to reduce it to 1/3 its original volume. Seawater reduced to 1/10 its original volume will precipitate halite. Note, salt crystals. If seawater evaporates completely, 83% of the precipitated evaporates will be halite, NaCl. 4% will be 4% will be gypsum, and the remainder will consist of other evaporates. USGS online data tells us about the Mississippian Age Michigan Formation referred to above. That means it's older than the dinosaur strata, which is in the Mesozoic. Quote, thickness of 91 to 122 meters are more typical, although generally composed of greenish gray and dark gray shale. This formation is lithologically, the type of rock, variable and includes discontinuous beds of sandstone, limestone, dolostone, gypsum, and anhydrite. One of these carbonate beds, called the brown lime, is a 3 to 6 meter thick dolostone that can be traced on the surface, subsurface, across much of the basin. This evidence proves a lot of hot volcanic ocean water covered the land and evaporated, leaving mineral salts behind. Reference: Kansas Geologic Survey, Geology, placed on the web July 24, 2009, originally published February 1978. Quote, "The Hutchinson Salt member of the Permian Wellington Formation," Permian is supposedly the period just before the beginning of the Mesozoic, when dinosaurs appear in the Triassic. Wellington Formation. Thickness of the salt reaches a maximum of 555 feet in northwestern Oklahoma. End quote. Flood, post-flood unconformity. Returning to the Arizona Petrified Forest, let's look at the post-flood Bitahoche Formation found on top of the flood-deposited Shinle Formation, described in the National Park Service brochure. This was deposited after the flood in lakes left behind by the receding ocean water. Quote, "During the late Miocene and early Pliocene epochs of the Neogene period, 4 to 8 million years ago, a large lake basin with ephemeral, temporary, on and off, lakes covered much of northeastern Arizona. Fine-grained fluvial, that means flowing water, and lacustrine, lake-related, of course, they are flood deposits, and they are assuming these are lakes and rivers. However, they are much, much larger than those of today. Sediment such as silt, clay, sand represent the lower part of the Bitahoche Formation. Volcanoes, both nearby and as far as the southwestern Nevada volcanic field, spewed ash and lava over the land and into the basin. Many of the volcanoes were ferritomagmatic, when ground or lake water mingled with eruptive material, magma, to cause explosive eruptions." End quote. This above is describing the post-flood volcanic upheavals on top of the flood deposits. The deposits below are mostly rhyolitic and colorful, and those on top after the flood are tan or gray basaltic ash. Most of these petrified fossil sites are created by rhyolitic magmas during the flood catastrophe, which have higher gas and water content than basaltic magmas, which contain more iron, and thus rhyolitic lava is more explosive, since gas under pressure is kept as a liquid deep in the earth, then explodes into gas as it nears the surface during decompression. The rainbow colors of most flood-created fossil sites, and the most typical of this is the Morrison Dinosaur Formation, indicated these were rhyolitic eruptions, like Dinosaur National Park, or Dinosaur Monument, or Carnegie Quarry. Carnegie, by the way, was a Illuminati who supported evolution. A rare rhyolitic volcanic caldera today is found at Lake Taupo, in the center of New Zealand's North Island. This huge volcano has produced two of the world's most violent eruptions in geologically recent times. In other words, since the flood. This supports the conclusion that eruptions just before and during the flood were much more explosive than those today. Rhyolitic eruptions are common in the fossil record, but rare in the post-flood historical times. I believe this is the evidence that they were part of the fountains of the deep, when the earth had much more water stored inside it than it does today. Only 3 eruptions of rhyolite have been recorded since the 20th century. The eruptions were at St. Andrews Strait Volcano in Papua New Guinea, Novarupta Volcano in Alaska, United States, and Ketchian or Chaitin, in southern Chile. Missing strata in the petrified forest. Between the Bitahochi Formation and the Chinle Formation, there is 192 million years of missing strata, if evolution were true. However, the contact shows an unconformity contact that is rough, showing it was a surface, but is almost level compared to canyons and rivers today. The large valleys, like the Grand Canyon itself, formed by erosion in this area, were all formed more recently, long after the flood, by huge amounts of moving water leaving the land, as well as breached dams, long after all the flat rock strata had been deposited during the flood event. We see nothing like these canyons and valleys in the geologic record. Reference: Geological Society of America Bulletin, Isotopic Age of the Black Forest Bed, Petrified Forest Member, Chinle Formation, Arizona, an example of dating continental sandstone by N.R. Riggs, S.R. Ash, A.P. Barth, G.E. Gorels, and J.L. Wooden, accepted 17th April 2003. Quote, volcanic detritus in the Chinle Formation was derived from multiple distinct sources. Coarse pebble and cobble-sized material may have originated in eastern California and/or western Arizona, where Triassic plutons are exposed. Fine-grained detritus, in contrast, was carried in ash clouds that derive from caldera eruptions in east-central California or western Nevada. End quote. This was a very large explosive volcanic eruption when water explodes into steam. Some of these volcanoes were probably in our Mojave Desert. And by the way, Ubehebe Crater was a volcanic steam explosion. And it looks kind of like Meteor Crater. But it's a volcanic explosion. Probably in our Mojave Desert, where there are lots of recent volcanoes and black basalt flows caused by the movement of the continents away from the mid-Atlantic ridge during and for many years after the flood. The Bible refers to the mid-Atlantic ridge as the fountains of the deep. Many of these volcanoes that erupted during the flood started erupting again after the flood in the Cenozoic into the Pleistocene about the time of Babel and Peleg, about 2500 BC or before. Now you might say maybe there were several eruptions over millions of years. Well, then where are the unconformities containing canyons and river valleys between these layers? There are no unconformities in the Chinle, much less canyons like we see in the present surface, except the minor one between the Bitahochi and the Chinle. In the Chinle, there are only changes in color. The unconformity above the Chinle is because the Bitahochi is a post-flood formation, when the breach dams of huge Pleistocene inland lakes caused flooding over 1,000 years after the flood, forming the post-flood Grand Canyon and strata formed during the flood. I will continue this in the next section.